Few teams had the same buzz coming into the 21-22 RLCS season as Dignitas. Last season, this roster was comprised of two of the youngest, most highly regarded 1v1 players in the world, and apparentlyJack and Joreuz. This team had raw talent that flashed brilliance at times, but ultimately didn't work out stylistically alongside the revered veteran Violent Panda. After parting ways with Panda, Dignitas was at an impasse. Having split from Panda and also letting go of their head coach Verge, only the two young guns remained on this team. The question now was, who would they fold into the mix to complete this team that should be competing at the highest levels? Ultimately, they signed KILLA, the legendary Scotsman who had won a world title alongside Vitality in Season 7, found himself in a volatile point of his career, having shaken the metaphorical cage with a few teams like Guild and Singularity in a short stint with those rosters. Some people would say that Scrub left kind of a poor taste in some people's mouths. Any reputation, fair or not, that Scrub had garnered were now being put to the test with a roster that had high aspirations to compete in a world championship, and mutual respect between all three of these teams would be the ticket to make this all work out or be a complete dumpster fire. So far, as we head to Sweden, many of the doubters have been silenced. With Scrub in the fold, Dignitas heads towards the first major as the second seed in a very deep European region. In a hyper-competitive and volatile European region, Dignitas has been the only team to have the level of consistency in their results that they have, being the only team to finish in the top 4 of all 3 events. For a team that looks visibly improved from event to event, what about their play style is allowing them to have these great results as they still continue to find themselves and improve? Well, I went back and watched every single game from Dignitas in the first 3 regional events, and here's what I found. So all 3 of these players are top tier 1v1 players, asserting dominance over the leaderboards and in show matches at different points in time. In theory, this wouldn't necessarily lead to great success in a 3v3 setting, but Dignitas is making this work and they prove my instincts wrong. This is not a team that pushes the pace or plays at a breakneck speed either. This is a pretty laid back, semi-casual approach that allows Dignitas to pick their opportunities, create space, and rely on their unstoppable solo plays to punish teams. Defensively, this team is also very hard to beat. Even though I would rate their communication as the skill they most need to improve, which if you're interested in seeing some examples of that, you can just go to apparentlyJack's YouTube page. He's posting comm videos very consistently now, pretty consistently now, and they're a really, really good watch. I'll have a link to that in the bio, by the way. But back to what I was saying. Even though their communication isn't awesome all the time, Dignitas is really good at turtling up in goal, and they do it almost better than any team in the RLCS. I mean, a great example of this is when we talk about how they beat BDS in the semifinals of Regional 2, which is the one that they took all the way and won. They held BDS to only 2 goals in 5 games, which is the lowest amount of goals in a 5-game series that BDS has ever scored with these 3 players on the roster. They went on to do a similar thing to Vitality in the finals, only allowing the Frenchmen to surpass 2 goals in a single game. On defense, Dignitas relies a lot on their ability to scramble and make difficult saves look routine, relying on instincts and their ability to recover quickly, all skills forged deep in the forges of the 1v1 jungle. These allow Dignitas to completely stifle their opponents, creating frustration and panic, which allows Dignitas to exploit open space mismatches on the offensive end. So now that I've kind of given an overview of what this team does, let's go through and parse through player by player and kind of see how this all comes together. The first player that we have to talk about, in my opinion, is apparentlyJack. Although this team doesn't have a coach, they have Jack. Jack has become the de facto leader of this team, and it's working out just fine so far. In listening to those comms videos I was talking about earlier and seeing their face cams, this is a pretty laid back, cool, calm, collected team. Jack gives him a game plan, and he has the respect of his teammates to follow and execute as a unit. Jack is a blur, and Dignitas looks best when he's getting the lion's share of touches on his team. Jack doesn't need to be getting all the touches to play the ball just to himself or overrun teammates in the same way that some players like First Killer or Ahmad are sometimes getting bad reps. Jack pushing the pace allows his teammates to wait for opportunities, but it also allows Jack to find himself in open space where he leans heavily on his mechanical abilities to hit some face-melting shots on his opposition. Jack is a willing passer too. He's often looking for Joreuz. Jack is constantly adjusting the way that he maneuvers around the field to best suit his teammates and overall the team's best opportunity to win games. Whether it is using those 1v1 mechanics that we've been seeing highlights of so far, or whether it is passing or just doing whatever he needs to do, Jack is not one to get locked into a game plan and not be able to adjust. He can constantly change how he's pressuring the ball, what shots he's taking, what opportunities he's creating, and overall, Dignitas is much, much better for it. I know that we're going to talk about all three of these players, and deservedly so. They're all phenomenal. It's what has made Dignitas as good as they have been so far this season. But if I had to choose one player from this team that I would want to build any unit around in the future, it would probably be apparentlyJack. He's a Swiss Army knife on the field, and he's got to be one of the top players in EU, if not the world. The next person we have to talk about is Joreuz. When we talk about a lot of professional Rocket League players, a common first word we attach is mechanics. Few players deserve to have mechanics attached to their name more than Joreuz. As one of the most dominant 1v1 players Rocket League has ever seen, Joreuz's ability to score from basically anywhere on the field, maneuver at will around the pitch, and defend tough situations only show the tip of the iceberg when we're talking about Joreuz. Every time this man touches the ball, defending teams begin to panic. Joreuz is a walking highlight reel who possesses one of the highest shooting percentages in the RLCS. He's a dynamic scorer, and when he's really on fire, he looks like the best player in the world, and it's not necessarily that close. Joreuz is what I refer to as a microwave player. This is a common term used in the NBA when we're talking about guards that score a lot quickly in bunches like Lou Williams or a Jamal Crawford. Basically what this means is he's not always prevalent on offense. Sometimes he has the least amount of touches, or he'll kind of have a relatively slow game, but then in the next game, Joreuz will heat up in an instant, and he'll use those solo mechanics to eviscerate his opponents. And earlier I was talking about Joreuz's accuracy, and this is something teams have to fear. Whether he's capitalizing on space made from a solo play or finishing a routine goal in the box, Joreuz has scored on 25% of his shot attempts over the first three regional events. Also, just a little side note, Joreuz is the only player of these three who seems to ever change his car. He sometimes opts for the Fennec over the Octane, and it's really interesting. A small adjustment in his play style seems to come along with this. As Joreuz becomes a more physical player when he's on the Fennec, he's seeking out bumps, demos, going for more 50s, and this is when juxtaposed to his more finesse-driven Octane play. And finally, we have come to talk about Mr. KILLA. Now, I will start the section with a caveat. KILLA is one of my favorite Rocket League players of all time. He came onto the scene as just a young kid. I mean, in many respects, he paved the way for his teammates to burst onto the scene the same way they have. I mean, now it's very common for players like apparentlyJack and Joreuz to be young and come on and immediately make a splash. I mean, there's players who are still waiting in the pipeline now, like Daniel, Aqua, Zen. This is now commonplace in professional Rocket League, but Scrub was the first. Maybe not the first, but certainly the first that was as popular as he was. So something Scrub has always utilized a lot in his games is keeping the ball close and creating 50s with his opponents. Scrub understands exactly how to position himself in relation to the ball and opposing player to hit it advantageously. One of the things he does really, really well is he'll carry the ball into opposing boxes for a big 50. So he'll have a low air dribble and he will just carry the ball and stay incredibly close, basically having it glued to the front of his car. And he's just begging the other team to 50 the ball so it'll pinch down and just kind of bounce for one of his teammates in the box. And if nobody challenges him, he'll either score it or he'll just pinch it off the backboard and get the same desired result. Scrub also uses his 50s expertise on defense as well. Oftentimes he'll match his opponents in transition, and this basically makes it impossible for teams to get set up. as Scrub just violently smashes his car into opposing passes, air dribbles, ground dribbles. He's all over the place. Any ball that pops into the air, Scrub is there to greet it. So far, Scrub has the lowest goal participation in the RLCS, and it's not very close. Scrub doesn't get a lot of his own opportunities to score, and his main functions are using 50s to create space for open looks for his teammates and being defensively sound. While Scrub does sometimes score off his own 50s or by utilizing his own 1v1 mechanics, which I would like to take a moment to say are nothing to be scoffed at, Scrub is a very, very good mechanical 1v1 player. But overall, Scrub plays a pretty passive role for this team. This allows Scrub to shine on the other end of the pitch, where he stands as one of the most fluid defensive stoppers in the game. I mean, time and time again, Scrub seems to find himself squarely in a position to block nearly impossible seeming shots on net, often showing up massive in moments when his teammates need him. Scrub is a willing third man who thrives in almost any defensive setting, while Jack and Joreuz shoulder the majority of offensive output for this squad. This symbiotic relationship, where Scrub is primarily filling gaps for Dignitas, is one of the most important reasons this team has been one of the best in EU so far this season. Scrub has willingly accepted this role because it's the one that makes this unit the most cohesive and the best. I personally think Scrub has a high level of respect for his teammates, and that respect and trust have led to massive leaps in improvement from event to event. I think this also sheds light on why Scrub is having success here that some doubted he would. So yeah, guys, that is going to be it on Dignitas. Really excited to see what they're going to look like at the first major. I think they have a pretty good chance to compete and possibly win the whole thing. I know it's still early in the season for them. I know that they're just going to be getting better and better as we go, but really the great unknown here is that they've looked better and better event by event, and now we have this gap before they go to the major. How are they going to look on LAN? A lot of unknowns. I'm super excited for it. But guys, again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I'll catch y'all next time.